Hello ladies and gentlemen, third round of the Sinquefield Cup and the entertainment just keeps on delivering. Today on the menu is going to be the long-awaited Magnus Carlsen Hans Niemann game, and boy oh boy what a game we have here. So the Royal Champ kicks off with the d4 c4 Nimzo Indian defense, and he opts for the g3 variation, which by the way, as the post-mortem interview with Hans Niemann revealed, was something that the American actually went through and was part of his prep before the game. Not only that, but he correctly predicted even the variation here. So he was actually really truly in the zone, so to speak. In fact, I believe that he said that all the way up to h6. So this is all still theory. All the way up to h6. He was in book. Although when I say it is all theory, yeah, I'm not finding an awful lot of games after c takes d4 in the database. So I suppose that this is already some kind of a novelty. But perhaps Hans just analyzed this all the way to here. Very interesting opening, and I quite like the way how Hans played it. So after taking on c3, immediately challenging the center with c5 like a boss, and then trading down and immediately accomplishing this middle game scenario, which is characterized by the two white isolated pawns. And the countermeasure usually, or should be anyway, against this is the two bishops and the fianchetto bishop raining down upon the black queen side. However, the circumstances are such that from what little I can understand about this position, neither factors can really become relevant. The two bishops are not awfully relevant because e5 bishop e6 just is going to create enough central control for black that the two bishops will not have big enough diagonals to fire along. And additionally, this diagonal is really well clocked up by the knight pawn combo, and the bishop's development, as I mentioned already, is not problematic at all. So Hans actually very seamlessly transitions into a slightly advantageous middle game right out of the opening, and in fact right into an endgame. Now this is textbook Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. But now Magnus is white, so right off the bat he is in a slightly worse endgame. Note, by the way, carrying on from our previous video, the topic of double pawns, this capture is no biggie for black whatsoever. So black's strategy in this setup and in this structure is to try to hunt the weak pawns. In general, any endgame scenario, or the vast majority of them, follow the logic of try to create weaknesses, and once there are weaknesses, target them. And when they say that double pawns are weak, sometimes they are, but the reality here is that it's virtually impossible for white to create play against these pawns, and hence Niemann is going to show you how real it is for black to actually target those. So let's see how he goes about that. King f1 defends the pawn here. Rook d8 occupying the only open file. Very logical chess. King e1, knight a5. Rook d1 neutralizing the rook on the d file, and hence goes rook c8. Now the pressure is beginning to build on the c3 pawn. Knight d2, bishop e6, and the pawn is hanging. So now you see the reality that this pawn is the real target, and in fact in this position Carlsen threw away the pawn with c4 to create active counterplay, which is what we were talking about in the previous video, and to entirely brutalize and demolish my own argument. According to the engine, actually knight e4, giving up the pawn on c3 and targeting the double pawns is the only realistic chance to fight for equality. That being said, and this is a theme that popped up in the interview and analysis between Hans Niemann and I think it was Ramirez. Also, the topic of two connected pass pawns on the queen side came up a number of times, and this is one of those occasions. And the engine insists that this is only 0.6. If you give this to a human, they will tell you that this is dead loss for white because of the connected passers. And so that is the reason why it was so unattractive and unappealing to Magnus, and who decided to just throw away the pawn and try to seek counterplay along the open file. But even this was, yeah, not exactly as great as he was hoping to make it. Although here again, knight e4, just to slam myself for the second time within 2 seconds, would have been a better way to go about business than knight takes c4, rook c4, take, and excuse me, check, and then bishop d5. So now the bishop is very, very effective, and the knight is a little bit sidelined, but admittedly, black is now a pawn to the good. So this is typically the type of defense that we were talking about in the video for the round 2 recap, where active defense, passive defense, the difference is huge, and often we should opt for the active defense even at the cost of material. Now the engine insists on this position being a draw, but it's an insanely difficult one to hold. Rook a8 was played, a6, rook b8, f5. Very logical to start get rolling with the pawns, paving the king's way to the center. Rook e8, a slight error here. f3 is the engine's favorite to exactly deny this operation of allowing the king in there. e4, g4, and this seems to be, by the way, the decisive error. Holding the position with rook d8, king f6, h4, and then after king e5, maybe f4 check. I don't know. I really do like black here, and I think that the engine is being a little bit overly optimistic about the drawing chances, but that was the way to go according to the machine. Once again, I understand why Magnus tries to change the structure and go for the active defense, but this move is bad for concrete reasons. Starting with rook c5, chasing the bishop back to a very passive square. Here rook d8 was preferable, but after king f6, king e5, or even king f6, king e7, the king enters the fray, and even take on g4 is actually a interesting idea. Magnus opted for bishop a2, and now knight c4 brought us the most instructive moment, in my opinion, to the game, as well as to the interview after the game, because here Hans Niemann was told by the interviewer that actually knight c4, according to the engine, is a draw. And he said something along the lines of he's not interested in what the engine says, and that if he accepted the fact that this endgame is a draw, then he would lose all his humanity, because this is what any human would immediately label as an insta-win. And actually, I am guilty of this as well, but I'm proud of it too. That usually when I teach my students about endgame patterns and endgame scenarios that we are aiming for in order to win a game, the connected pass pawns is one of our favorite ones to stir towards the game. I always tell my students that if you have 2 connected passes in almost any kind of endgame, it's almost certainly a win. And it's definitely the case in most rook endings. And so knight c4 is just the most logical move. And actually Hans countered in the interview, which I also quite liked, saying that if you ask the 100 Grandmaster about bishop takes c4 and evaluate the ensuing rook ending, 99 would say that this is dead lost for white, and I totally agree. And it's sheer insanity that despite the fact that black has got the 2 connected passers, the engine claims that this is holdable, although now my engine shows me minus 1.5. And in the end, actually Hans Niemann said that, you know what, the engine is wrong. It's still winning. So it was really, really funny to see that. Yes, we now rely on the engine a lot, but sometimes you have to accept the fact that chess is played between 2 humans. And for a human to grasp the concept of best defense is to allow 2 connected passes, even if that human is the world champion, it's just something that is completely off the cards. Like, not even, I don't think that this move crossed Magnus's mind for longer than 5 seconds. In very, very, very interesting play. And as such, it's perfectly arguable that knight c4 is the best move in the position. a4 was played, knight d6 was played. Now the black pieces are really, really nicely coordinated, and that's definitely something to to mention. FG4, and Hans is now cruising towards victory. And here comes the motive that actually brought a very crooked smile on his face, and I can understand why, because such a move is so awesome to make in any endgame scenario where, you know, it appears like a very technical endgame and we're trying to outmaneuver one another, and lo and behold, ta-da, there is a mate here, buddy. Now that is a rude shock. And I'm not saying that Magnus blundered this, but I certainly am saying that moves like this make chess really awesome to watch, because even the most technical endgame can turn into a spectacular tactical skirmish where all of a sudden the black pawn is unstoppable. See ya, wouldn't wanna be ya. So that was really cool. And of course the other point of the sack is that now these double pawns are really truly bad, and knight e4 actually renews this very dangerous threat, so Magnus had to run. And there was one more point in the game that I wanted to show you, where according to the engine the draw was within range, or within reach rather, and that was here at this point. According to the Mighty Machine, rook takes was drawish, although Hans again argued his case, and I think he was right there too in terms of practical chances and whatnot. But here bishop h5, oh my god, everyone would try to defend with bishop d5, and Hans claimed in the interview that he thought that if this was not winning, then well, he didn't deserve to win. And funnily enough, again, the engine is not backing his case here. But anyway, the real cool move that I really liked was the absolutely unlikely bishop h5. This is just surreal. Check, and watch this line. King f1, rook check, there, king g5, bishop e8, rook takes, and after the check, which still looks like a horrid move, forcing the king to a better square, comes the amazing rook h7, and lo and behold, the h6 pawn can't be defended. It is absolute craziness. I have to come back. I can't push because it's hanging, and if I come back, I get checked again. If I go here, the pawn gets checked down. If I go here, it's the g4 pawn that gets checked down, and all of a sudden, it's a draw. Chess is just so beautiful, man. That line was next level, but it avoided the attention of the world champion, who went with bishop d5, the more natural move to centralize the bishop, to cover more squares, to operate both in the offense and in the defense. That is the natural move, but rook d2 just said, you done, brother. Now you are pinned for good, and as soon as the rooks are off, the superiority of the activity of the black pieces will be decisive. King g6, rook d7, and knight g5. Now that was a very delicious move. Now there is a lot of geometry on the board. So, for example, bishop c6, which would normally work because after takes the rook is free, loses to the check. Oops. So here Magnus resigned himself to the fact that the rooks had to come off, but that actually meant another kind of resignation very soon too, because now the world champ is a pawn down, all the pawns are isolated, the black king is ridiculously active, there is just no chance whatsoever to hold this game. King e5, very nice, king g3, and knight f1 check. Now Magnus went back. I would like to show you what happens if they take. Knight takes e3 check, and now after, knight takes h2 check, excuse me, and now if the king comes this way, we go here, and then we pick off this pawn, and then eventually we are going to be able to gobble up this one. The route to attack the pawn, because all squares seem to be under cover of the bishop on f7, is that we are going to go knight f5, and then we are going to go knight b3. Knight d4, and from d4 the knight is going to threaten both of these two squares, and the bishop can't be on a square that covers both of these other than d5, which is impossible to go to. So long story short, here is going to win the pawn, and after that it's a super simple win. So Magnus instead opted here for king f2 to try to hang on to the e3 pawn, but dropping h2 was just too much, and yeah, he actually threw in the towel. So here again, it's very nice that if bishop takes, then knight c6, and now ironically we have got the two connected passes on the other side of the board, winning the game. Magnus went bishop d5, which is a very famous motif to completely kill a knight, which now has nowhere to go. But unfortunately for the world champ, king e5 kicks the bishop out. King e5, excuse me, but first h5, of course, because king e5 would allow white to eat the pawns. Precision till the end. h5 first, bishop move h4, and now king e5, when the king can't access these pawns on time, means that the bishop has to go now somewhere, which allows the knight to return the fray and easily convert the endgame. So a huge scalp for the American. And at this point, I would like to clarify that he has been in the limelight for the controversial interviews that he has given, and I think that there is a fair bit there to be adjusted and fixed, and you know, humility is a huge factor in my opinion in being great in anything you do at all. One reason why Vishy Anand stands out among the many world champions that we had in this sport. But at the same time, I would like to mention something, and I'm very curious what you guys think, and that's the passing or the finishing concluding thought for this video. I've watched this interview for the first time, by the way. I watched throughout the 70 minutes of interview, mostly about the game and his thoughts with Hans. And I couldn't help but notice the striking similarity between him and Bobby Fischer. The way how he spoke about chess, the way how he spoke about his approach towards chess, the way how he approached the lines, the mentality, the lifestyle, the dedication, just everything seems to be so similar. And I know that that is a huge compliment to be paid for someone who is not even a world champion candidate at the moment. But I just can't help but notice that there is just so many analogies there that are freakishly on point. I think that, yeah, there is a chance that we are watching history in the making, is all I'm saying. So, on that note, ladies and gents, this is going to be the conclusion of round 3 of the Sinquefield Cup, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow in the next video.